entrepreneurship journey. And I call it a journey because one, it's you never know the twists and turns it's going to take, and two, you hope it never ends. It just keeps going. So, to tell you just a real quick background, my family transferred to Charlotte, North Carolina from Costa Rica in Central America when I was a small child, and my father had always wanted to come to the States, and he got an opportunity through work. He worked for essentially kind of like the State Department in Costa Rica. He did electrical engineering and managed a bunch of maintenance for them. So they opened up in Charlotte office. We moved there, and after 2 years, they decided to close that office and move it to Miami. And my parents were very opposed to living in South Florida at the time. So they kind of said, like, hey, you can stay, but you got to figure out what you want to do. So my dad decided to start a tiny little construction company. He started doing vinyl siding for the housing boom in the late 80s, early 90s. Charlotte, as you guys probably know, is a big financial hub in the country. Lots of New Yorkers were moving down there, cashing out on their, New York homes and just buying up everything. So it was a great time for him. And that grew into an entire general contracting business. And from the age of 10 or 11, which is looking back is probably super illegal, my little sister and I were dying to help and hey, Dad, how can we earn 25 cents doing this and that? So he'd have us actually folding little pieces of the vinyl siding edging that go on the homes just to give us something to do. He'd pay us a quarter a sheet. So my sister and I would spend the weekends just how many can we fold for you? So from a really early age, he kind of instilled in us, you can do whatever you want, even though you're girls and you're, Latinas and you're immigrants, but you got to work for it, which I thought was really cool to learn from, what is traditionally kind of like a machisto Latino dad, right? So he's like, no, you do whatever you want, but you're going to put in blood, sweat, and tears. And he told us from very early on, the one thing he asked was that we just do things we're really passionate about. He didn't want us to just work for the sake of work. So I decided at, the prime age of 17 that I knew what I wanted for the rest of my life and pursued a nursing career. So I became a labor and delivery nurse, and it took about 2.5 years to realize that was not for me. Delivered 117 babies, and number 117 was the call. That's it. That's all I'm going to do. So I took a leave of absence and worked part-time as well for a local retailer that was expanding, translating marketing materials from English to Spanish, and then reaching out to the Hispanic community in Charlotte to sort of make the connection for incoming immigrant families to be able to find resources for furnishing their homes, which is something so minor to all of us, once you're grounded in this country, but to immigrants, it's a whole to do. They don't know the system, and something as simple as finding an apartment and then a mattress, a nightstand, all these little things. So we created this really cool program to kind of link the retailer with communities that were embedded into different immigrant associations. So I translate all the materials, showed up to work the day after I took my leave of absence for my nursing job, and told my part-time boss, I think I quit nursing yesterday. And he said, Carina, you can't just quit your career. I said, sure I can. I don't love it. I'm not happy. I need to do something else. So God bless this man to this day. His name was Ryan. And he said, why don't you just work here full time to figure out what you actually want to do when you grow up? And I'm grateful for him every day because I dove into marketing and essentially started to plan these really fun events where we kind of invite the community leaders to these sort of open houses for furniture and mattress stores, two things you'd never think go together, to just introduce them to packages and programs to, again, help furnish homes for newly arrived immigrants and even all of the folks moving in from out of town with the influx at that time. So all that led me down a path of retail development for commercial real estate. And as we were setting up this program, we decided to set it up in a whole bunch of other cities. So I ended up moving from Charlotte to Vegas to Florida to Houston, very tiny, too short of a visit in California, back to Florida, and then to DC, which is where I am today. And after exploring that, I decided I need to do this for myself. I love doing the events. I love creating programs. How can I do this every day and have this sort of level of enthusiasm about my work and also make a living? More importantly, without making myself crazy. When you need to gather communities, call us so we can help you kind of think through putting all those pieces together. So it started as a side hustle, as many entrepreneurs usually start. It grew very quickly. And then in 2019, after a handful of years of kind of doing it on the side while still working with the commercial real estate world, I decided to go out on my own just in time for the pandemic. And I've always loved technology. I love leveraging technology for efficiency. So we moved quickly to just kind of buy up very minimal amounts of equipment to be able to offer our services virtually. We already had I think we had 4 clients at the time that were out of state. So a lot of times have to do calls on GoToMeeting before Zoom took off. So we were, familiar with how to navigate. And then honestly, it was just fake it till you make it at that point. We loved what we were doing. We told clients we were going to figure it out. And in 2020, I honestly had the best year of my career to, up to that date. You couldn't even combine doing it part-time and working for a corporate company full-time. It was an epic year. And every day was a zoo. I loved it. I thrived on the just sort of changing landscape of what we were going to do. And I think the biggest lesson I learned and what I'm so fortunate to be able to share today was that my father had told me pretty early on, hey, whatever you do, outsource the things you don't know how to do well. Like a lot of entrepreneurs will try to do everything in the beginning, accounting, HR, marketing, websites, all of those things. And he said, focus on what you're really good at and find partners you trust to help with all those other components, because you want your product, your service, whatever you're delivering to thrive and to speak for itself. So that's what we did in 2020. Everyone was home, right? So it made it a lot easier to get a hold of people. We weren't chasing everybody down. When can we get coffee? When can we get lunch? I'm like, you're sitting at home, pick up the phone. And brought in who I could, who I could test and sort of depend on to help grow our business. So through the pandemic, we expanded with commercial real estate partners who had office spaces that were empty and started to say, Karina, what do we do about bringing people back in? So we decided to offer a service where, why don't we bring in our expertise of creating communities, growing events, planning and scheduling and putting on events into spaces that aren't being utilized sufficiently because everyone's working from home. They love that idea. A few of our commercial real estate partners decided to bring us on to consult and expand that. And last year, we signed our first contract with a commercial real estate company downtown in DC to take their pretty empty amenity space and monetize it for events. We've started to host weddings. We've booked 24 weddings for this year. We've sold out every prime date, and we have booked weddings all the way into 2025. So yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm tired. It's a lot of work.
Karina, how do you move 27 times in 5 years and keep all this pulled together and keep focusing on what you're doing business-wise?
It's a really great question. I think I love using mobile technology, and I decided as soon as Siri became a thing on an iPhone, how fast can I learn everything you can do? Because I want to be able to just tell a computer what to do for me. So one thing I do is I try really hard in the moment. Like I chat with Amanda, and maybe we get off the phone and I say, I'm going to send you XYZ when we're off the phone. I hang up and I tell Siri to remind me, and I set a lot of not reminders, but actual alarms for in the evening when I'm doing my download. That's how I can keep track of so many things. I do not depend on my brain to remember everything. I really depend on my brain for processing information and solving problems. No one can be expected to remember everything. And then more importantly, I love the phone. I feel like connecting is so important. I'm drowning in emails every single day, like most of the world. So if someone sends me an email, asks something of me, I have 2 minutes in the car. I'd rather call them, offer what I can over the phone, try to resolve as much as possible, and give it back, put it back in their court as soon as possible to keep the ball rolling. Otherwise, we read an email, we've all done it. Okay, I'll reply to that later. And then 15 other things pop up and a week goes by and you're replying, thanks for your patience. We've all been there. I'm there all the time. So I try to just strike while the iron's hot in that moment. We're up to, so we have 7 people total. We're not very large, just of like contractors that help with the events and things like that. I think a big place that my industry itself, the event planning industry, is headed is flexibility. Where it used to be everyone was very siloed. Caterers could only serve food, decor could only provide furniture, planners were just there to coordinate everyone. I think it's headed in a place where flexibility is super important. And I'm glad that our team from the beginning focused on community engagement and gathering people and not just putting on an event. So I think having the flexibility of that, of the definition of what an event can really be, makes us a little bit more of an appealing, potential vendor for clients and building owners. They don't want to just hire an event planner. They want to hire a team that can be creative and say, how they still need to be profitable. How can we make money in our space? And they haven't thought outside the box to how can we connect our space and make it the public useful. All these buildings converting to residential spaces lack a lot of times amenities that are active. They might have like a, what do they usually call it in apartment complexes, like a recreation room or, like a room for community, but they don't have programming for it. And our team knows how to develop programming that is engaging, how to pull your residents, how to really interact with them so that the spaces are brought to life. And I think that's a great place where our team's going to be able to utilize our skills, across a market that hasn't been touched yet. We really want to make sure our time and expertise are valued, right? And it's so hard to put a dollar on 1 hour of my 15 years of experience is worth X. We have two options that we offer a client, and we base it on the contract total for their event. So if their event's going to be under $50,000, we have a gauge of how many hours of work we're going to put into it, and we have our set hourly rates. So we attach that to the price. So we know a $40,000-$50,000 event is going to cost us about 60 hours of work. And then based on who's going to work on it, we have a billable rate for each person. If the event's over $50,000, it becomes a lot easier to add a percentage across each of the vendor contracts as a almost commission back to us. So we carry the contracts and we say, your catering contract's $10,000 and we're going to charge 15% on top of that for handling everything. So whatever that final bill is what the client pays. We take our 15%, we pay the $10,000 to cater, and we're done. But this way, I just think it's so important for my team to constantly feel like the amount of work that they're putting in being valued and they're being compensated enough to want to do it over and over and over, because it's still important, right? You can't work for free. We all have bills to pay. And it's very hard to be positive like that every day. I'm not going to lie and wake up and say every day I'm a cheerleader for my work, but it is a choice. So that's, I'm sipping my coffee in the morning. How stressed out or miserable do I want to be about the things I cannot control? Or how excited and, forward thinking do I want to be about the things that I can manage and figure out how to make them, work for our team? So.